Myself, Santhosh, working as a data engineer in ADM and Cognizant. So what we are trying to achieve is, this is one of the hackathons that I participated where we need to build something with the payment gateway. So what I thought was always when you pay for something, you get redirected to another page and then you have to pay from there. So every time you get redirected, it's a bit annoying. And then another part is how they store the credit card details, as someone explained from Zscaler, the guy who told about security and stuff. So the problem is that when you kind of enter the credit card details or any card details for the matter, it obviously goes into a database, which is accessed by the data engineers, as myself. I have seen all the professional data that everybody has. We scrape LinkedIn, do all the things. That is how data is. So it is just there. I can just write a single piece of line, single SQL query, and then I can see all the data. But it is in an encrypted way. But if you want to find out if there is a flaw in the email or there is a special character involved, then you have to definitely get the exact email and look out what is the character that makes the system break. So for that matter, we I thought of doing it, but yeah. So a bit about me and what I do. Most of my work on the weekends are dedicated to hackathons. Most of the places that I build, or that is the thing that I showcase over here. So this is something that I've worked on for one of the payment solutions, but this can be replaced with any of the existing, or there's a startup which is bringing up a checkout page. You can directly integrate with that. So that really helps out in leveraging and diversifying. So you don't have to follow whatever is just said. So all the code and everything that I show is open source. It is on my GitHub. So all the code, all the charts and everything. So we'll skip this. I think I don't have an audio. So this is probably how my weekend goes. Dinner, breakfast, lunch, and then this is obviously, this is when AzConf, someone introduces, and then this is how you come to Chennai. Audio is not there, my apologies. So you go there, watch a movie, do all these, you try to imagine you are being in this particular world of enjoyment, and then you come back to this again. So this is a loop that I have been for like more than 4 years now, from my third year in college. After learning there is a community of this sort, right? So I have never been into a community before 2018. So my first meetup was in Quara, back in Bangalore. It was a world meetup, so they have it every year. So that was my first one. And this is some fact. So 2020, I was listening. That was the first initiative of AZ conference. That was the first thing that was virtual though. And 21, they had a hackathon. Obviously, they didn't have this time, so I couldn't participate in it. And today, I'm talking to you about something. So this is my journey of AzConf, so and what I have gone through. So some of you in this crowd might be the speakers of next year's AzConf. So obviously, how many of you would be, would be willing to do that? Like next year, I want to present something. So this is something that I've built. I'm passionate about, and this is something that I can showcase. So obviously, you can definitely try it out. So basically, why teams? So why the payment should be in teams? So that is the first question even I had. Why it should be in teams? It can be a regular page. Everybody has their own checkout mechanism. It is built into their own apps. So these are some of the statistics that I stole from the internet. I think one of the facts that I definitely chose this is the monthly users. So every enterprise uses Teams for any of their. So this is not for the enterprise users. My use case would be more of someone has a marketplace, so where you sell something inside Teams. So it is not a newer concept, but people are not building something to it. So there is a hidden market out inside Teams where you can build apps inside Teams, which can even a simple app just charge $3 or $4 a month, and you have this much wide base. So just imagine that you get 0.1% of the user base. So that the minimal app that you can make, which can make them productive or which can make their lives easier. So that is a simple thing that you can do. It doesn't to be really hard. So whatever the struggles that you are facing, let's say you open up Teams, this is something, that feature that I want, but it's not there. So that is what I target mostly. So if this was there, the Teams would be more interesting, and this would make life easier. So that is something that I've worked on. And there are a few projects that I've worked on before, just inside the Power Platform, which I can't show you right now. So this would be the architecture diagram that we would see. So the main focus here is the Power Apps that we have. So everything is done from Power Apps. So the other connecting factors are Power Automate. So Power Automate is the place where you have all the flows connecting to the APIs, and we have a Azure function which is running with Python. So why Python? Again, my favorite language, so that is why I'm using it. C# is the best, but obviously everybody has a favorite among the languages. Python is pretty much straightforward and easy to use, at least for me. But I'm also doing something with Scala from my work. So Python and Scala goes very easy. So if you're working in PySpark, big data, pretty much the syntax is similar. Every functions, transformations would be pretty much similar. So the interesting part happens in this part. So where you embed a page right inside the teams. So when you click on something, when you click buy, you won't get redirected anywhere. So even in Amazon, when you click on something, you go to another page. You land, and then you have to enter your credit card details, and then you have to click pay. That is how you pay. The second choice that I found out with Amazon is that where you can preload with Amazon Pay, and then you can click buy. Just by one click, you can buy. So that is one thing that I have tried. I wasted 500 or 600 rupees on that, just to check if there is another page coming up or it is just the confirmation. So once you click on pay, it just pays. So there is no confirmation asking like, do you want to really pay this and get? So there is no confirmation. Once you click, no, it is paid. But the problem with here is, as you know, Amazon, I think if you have used AWS services, now they have changed the RBI regulations that they should be storing the credit card details. And then there is another mail after 1 week that they got special permission to store it. I think if you are using AWS, you might have known, it goes to everyone who has paid service with AWS. So, and again, this is the final piece. You have everything in Neem. So there is like a 3-layer stack. So one is the page, the actual checkout page, which is also customizable, which is hosted on, again, Azure Functions. There's a public URL. And then we embed this page into Power Apps. So why we do embed this into Power Apps? So if the URL is tampered in some way, Power Apps, if you're tampering this URL, let's say you have a URL which is on the checkout page, and then if you're using a post request, it is fine. But if you want to see, so the checkout page is generated on Rapid. So there is a payment gateway or a platform known as Rapid, if that is like a new startup thing. So what they have is like their URL, so rapid.pay.com or pay.rapid.com, and then the /checkout, and then you have the params as the checkout ID. So if someone tampers the ID in the first place, so in this part, so at least in Teams, you need to find this place where you have to tamper the URL, actual URL. So this would be embedded inside Power Apps. So if you want to tamper this URL, you can only tamper this URL, the Power Apps. So since this is embedded inside, so but you can tamper this URL inside Power Apps. This won't be exposed to the enterprise when you're using Teams. Directly, if you're using the Power Apps, you can tamper it. But once it is embedded inside the Teams channels, you can't tamper it. So that is one thing that I see as a security add-on. And on top of everything that we have seen so far, the one factor is you can trust any app that is posted on Marketplace. So they have like a month of filtering. So once you submit an app, that goes into a reviewal process, and then they check if every security aspect is followed or not. You don't have to submit the source code, actual source code of it, but you have to submit whatever details there's. What is the DB that you're using? How you handle multi-tenant? All these questions would come up, and you have to definitely answer those questions. And on top of that, they have final screening as well. So if it involves cash flow, and if you're sending, if there's a budget, if you cross the budget, there would be questions on how you handle other things. Why do you make money? How do you store it? And what are the purpose of it? So once it crosses a limit, I'm not sure on the limit. My apologies for that again. But there is a limit that you can use it. Like if you're a user like you and me, making a $100 or $200 per month, you're serving for, let's say, 50 customers, then that won't be a problem. So let's say you are doing it for 1 million people, and then you are getting just $2 per month. So in that time, it is pretty cheaper, and more people are using it. So in that case, you would have some kind of questions that you should be able to answer. But obviously, once the criteria passes, you will get the app featured on their marketplace. But as of now, if there are tenants which restrict that, so certain companies restrict what the users can see. Otherwise, if you go to your teams and search in the apps part, just search the name of it. So every approved Microsoft approved apps would be there. So that is how you have to go with this. So this is like a plugin that you can use. This is not an end user directly consumable application. This you can plug into something. So if you have a website such as an Amazon, inside Teams, or if you're getting paid, or you want to make payments, or if you want to receive payments, let's put it in this way. You send an invoice for a client and then you want to receive something, and this is one of the applications that I thought of building it. So it is like a multi-tenant thing. So let's say if you want to be billed by Microsoft, say A and B. So A is sending you an invoice, and then B, this is for a small scale industry. For large scale, obviously this doesn't make sense. You have an automation process to send out invoice. If you have like $250, less than that, you can make small businesses which can use Teams. They would be benefiting from it. But most of the enterprise customers would obviously have an automated process where you have an invoice, you have to pay it in 10 days of the first 10 days of the month. Then obviously you will pay it as soon as possible. So that to avoid other charges, extra charges. So that is how it works. And so for storage is one of the factors that last year when I was participating with the hackathon, I was using Cosmos DB, which was really difficult to use with Power Automate. What you have to do is you have to get the ID, and then you have to get the entire object, and then you have to update that object and then push it again. But instead of that, last time I got a feedback from one of the judges to use SharePoint, start using SharePoint instead of Cosmos DB. So that was pretty cool that you can directly integrate everything with SharePoint list. So there is a hidden, I'm not sure if you know it or if it is only me. So there is something called as a SharePoint list that you guys can use as a temporary DB. I'm not sure if it is scalable or not. But as far as I have seen, it is pretty fast, and then it is easier to use, easier to kind of integrate it with Power Apps or Power Automate. So you just have connectors. So I think the presentation that you have seen for the Power Platform, building a Power Platform with Dataverse and stuff. So they told about the connectors, right? So SharePoint is a direct connector. You don't have to pay for anything. So there are premium connectors on top of the free connectors that Microsoft gives you. Premium connectors, you need to have a paid service, but for others, you don't have to have a paid service. So I think I have covered almost everything of this. And sorry? Yeah, the receive part is the premium one. So what we have done is, so this part, I'll show you in a demo. The one part that is a premium one is where you send an adaptive card, and then there is a URL which if someone hits the URL, you need to receive that in the Azure functions. So there is two, I think it is three. So one is for displaying the page. So that will show you the HTML page, the actual HTML page which we are using for the payments. The second one is for receiving the adaptive card. So there's an approval process. So this is just a gimmick for adding into the usual stuff where we kind of expose that these are the things that you can do. So approval flow is something that I added from a previous project. So approval flow, obviously you have for a payment. So let's say you are paying more than $1,000, you need to get an approval from your senior. So if it is less than that, you can directly pay on yourself. So that is something that I added. So this part is the premium connector. So you can use logic apps. So I tried with logic apps. You can do the same thing where you would receive the response. So it is no more sending it to anything. So you will generate a URL. When your URL is set by a post request or a get request, what you would do is you would trigger something. So it could be anything. It could be adding something to a SharePoint list. It could be another HTTP call. You can do any sort of transformations or any sort of flows that you can trigger from it. But for now, what we are using is we are just storing it in the SharePoint. Let's say this also has a callback to the Azure functions. So once you pay the checkout, so once you make the payment, so when you click on pay, and then you don't get redirected anywhere. So you stay on the same page. But the backend process is that the rapid payment gateway sends the callback request to the Azure functions that we have deployed. So that way we would know who has paid, who has not paid, what is the current status of the checkout page. So that is one thing that I'll show you in the demo that would be more easier to understand. So I think I have talked about all the services that are more Power Apps, Automate, Adaptive card is something that integrating was a bit difficult at the starting, since the level of, there are 5 versions of it. So version 4 and 5 doesn't support my use case, which I was striving hard for more than a day. That doesn't support this particular yes or no type. When you click on yes and no, you get HTTP. Again, you go back to the Azure functions. That doesn't work right. And with 4, you get the image of it, but you don't get the uh, links to redirect. And SharePoint database storing. So let's see something instead of, I think it is too boring now, even for me. So this is the page that I think it is still running. Okay. So this should be in 2 separate tenants. So this would be the generate invoice page where a tenant A would generate the invoice and send it to you. Somewhat. So company name, okay, could be anything. Let's say Google. Put it as Microsoft. And then you enter an amount, $3.45, and then send invoice. So what in the backend happens is there is a flow triggered. So this is right from Power Apps. So once you click on it, and then it triggers a flow. Let's see. So this is how it looks in the first place. So getting this right at the first time is really hard, at least for me. So what you have to do is you have to try multiple times to get the JSON schema right, so that you can parse it and then use it. This step I didn't know until I saw another guy's video stating that you have to use this, otherwise it won't work. I was just passing it from the body of it. If you have used this power flow, apart from the standard ones, it is really hard to understand it. So what happens is you get the body of it. So what is the amount, what is the company, and what is the invoice and the due date and stuff. And then the interesting part happens over here. I think it went. So what would have happened is 10, 15, okay. So this is the URL that it has triggered. So this is the create invoice part. So this is the API that we are using. So you can host any API that you want to receive or send or display something. You can use any of that with Azure functions. And then you create an item in the SharePoint. So this is another pain in the ass. So what happens when you don't know how to do it for the first time is really hard. So once you do it for the first time, you keep on adding stuffs to it, right? So when I started with Power Apps, it is first difficult to get even the flow right. So once you change something in the flow, let's say the name of it, it doesn't reflect on the Power Apps. So you have to delete the flow and then add it again. All the parameters that you pass disappears. You have to type everything in. So that is really hard if you're doing it for the first time. But once you do it, you know that this is the way, then you can build it faster. So you get the 26 ID. I'm not sure if it is refreshed. So this is what we have entered, 34 cents. So this shows that it is new. So this one I created when I was sitting there. So this is a checkout ID that we have. So this ID goes directly into the rapid URL. So I'll just show you that as well. So something happens behind the hood. So once you send the invoice, you get another adaptive card that you can respond to. So this is where the thing happens, right? So once you click on S, I think there should be a link. So second flow, once you add the list, and this is the approval flow. Check, 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 check. Oh. I thought the demo was going good. Either the demo breaks or the mic happens, something. So once you click on S, so this would be this waiting for the response to happen. So it can wait for days. I have tried it for 3 days. It can wait a maximum of 3 days. So once you click on yes or no, I'll show you what the flow is. So it will also send a fancy email to your Outlook. So if you're into that, if you want, manager approval is always that place where you have to send an official email stating that I've paid this or I've done this, so that if there is an escalation, you can just forward it to the right person. So once you click on yes, so submitted action yes. Now who has submitted it and which tenant ID is from, the response time of it. This is in UTC. You can put it 5:30 minutes. So what happens is there's this part. So this part, what you have to do in Cosmos DB is that you have to get the ID first. So let's say the ID is 26. You have to use the get object from the Cosmos DB, and then you have to get the object. Then you have to update whichever the fields that you're trying to update. So in my case, I have to update only the status part, approved for payments. So once this payment part is done, so you would also have another UI. So these are the fancy loading stuff. Though this is harder to do, so you have to use timers and other things. So HTML and CSS will be pretty easy to use the loaders. But for this, there is a timer of 2 seconds. So once the timer hits, there is a variable change, and the variable is directly linked to the visible property of the Power Apps, and then that you have to change. So that is another I wouldn't say it is a feature of it, but I'm missing out the fact that you can directly manipulate the variables of the components of the Power Apps instead of assigning a variable to it and then changing the state of that variable to show something. So visible, you can't just say button1.visible equals false or true. You have to set a variable to the visible object, and then you have to update that property to make sure that reflects visible true or not. You have to toggle it in such a way that this work happens. So the loader is still there, but you can see. So this is another fancy thing. You always have this light and dark theme for the hackathon part. So what you do is, this is the last one that we sent. So once you click on pay now, so this is one part that, so this is embedding two things. So one is this complete Power Pay is embedded here. So once you click on this, and then, so this should ideally be an app. So whatever app lives on this side, right? Shifts is an app, and then activities is another app. So you can add different apps. So ideally, you should be able to upload this as an app once it is approved by Microsoft. You would once search for it. In the apps part, you can just search for the name that is approved, and then you can add it over here. And then you have to click on this to get this page. So as of now, I'm just showing you that you can just add the URL of the Power Apps into the Teams as a tab. So you can add emails or documents to it. So for easier view, so let's say you have a finance team working on something, they want to see the monthly sheet, which is very handy if you have it in the tabs instead of going into a Word document, opening an Excel, stuff like that. You can also embed every Excel file, anything that you can click on add, and then click the tab or the URL that you want to showcase, and you can do it. So this is a card page. So this is nobody's card. So this is a demo card. And then click on pay. So this is another flow happening behind it. So you have a callback from this Rapid. I think I forgot to load the Rapid page. Okay, anyways. So this is the SharePoint that we are trying to use. So approved for payments. So once you refresh it or click on this one. So this is also a bit annoying from SharePoint. Doesn't update. You have to click on refresh, or you have to click on this Now this updates over here, but that doesn't update on this particular UI. So once you click on it, it again goes back to the servers and gets the actual status of it, payment successful that we have just done. But for some of this doesn't update in the page, so that is also another thing that you can try out. Someone was asking in the forum how to automatically refresh if there is an object update. So if you have idea, you can definitely, that question has been asked a lot of times, and it has been upvoted many times to add it as a feature that you can have a manual way for refreshing the page. So some event happens, so let's say there is another item that's been added to it. So these are just 26 list items. So let's say you have millions, and then you have live transactions coming in. So you can't just hit on refresh to see load all the 10K details on this particular page. So this could be one thing that you can try out answering or building something that can refresh the page automatically. I think we can do it in with HTML, just HTML body or dot reload, I think. I've done it once, but not sure how we can do that in this one. But yeah, so this is the complete flow that we have. So the problem with this as well is, so everything has a con and drawback. So this thing you have to pay a little to get the thing working. So this is just a demo that I'm showing. So this was completely free. So there is no cost involved for getting this up and running on your own thing. This is completely free. The problem is you have to scale it up and check and verify, load test, do all that before you give your submission to the Microsoft App Store. That is Marketplace, they call it as. So that is the only part that is left out when you want to submit. So they ask a bunch of questions wherever you have tested, what is the feedback that you have got. Those kind of questions you need to answer. So you need to have a solid base, solid evidence that you have to submit to them, so that it is more easier for them to approve instead of asking a bunch of questions and making you to answer it. So I think that's it for the demo. It was a really short one. So these are the services that are used. So nothing fancy. You have a function app, and then you have the insights that we just saw. So this is the live insights that you see with any service that you want. But function apps, this is one of the easiest things to do. So what a log inside your Python app, it just comes here. So you can see what is done, what is the payback that you received, what is the SharePoint list URL that has been updated. You can check whatever you log it on the Python app, you can see everything in the trace. Yeah, that is a custom screen that is made from Azure functions. No. So that is the 3-layer thing. So you have, so this is a page, right? So this is a page that you get from another page. For some sort, I'm not able to find it. So this is one page that is embedded again. So this on top of it. So this particular page that you see, this one is embedded. So I think so. This iframe. So this iframe has this particular URL and then the ID to it. You see the item ID 26. So this goes into the callback. So you don't know who is clicking on the pay and who is paying it. So what you do is you give the ID, and then this ID is used by this particular payment checkout servers. Oops. So this particular ID that you see is used by the payment checkout for the redirection or the callback thing. So you tell them that what are the events that to give the callback to. So what we are trying to do is checkout and what is the type, and then we give the checkout page ID. So this is the checkout ID that we have, and then the item part. So this particular URL, the admin is when you create a new dev account for Microsoft developers, so you get this particular custom URL that you can make. So this is the part where it kind of embeds this particular thing inside this one. So once you make it as an app, you can't just go to the iframe and see what is inside. Since the code is proprietary and everything inside this particular thing is known only to the developers of it and not to the public. So one of the things that you should definitely check out. This is something to build upon. It is not like a final thing. You can build upon this particular thing, and then you can make another product out of it. So this is like a plugin that you can use for another product, and then you can build on top of this one. So I think that's it with the demo. I think that worked out. So and then fancy stuff, again you update it. So once you see the update happening, so you can also refresh if you want to. So again, these are the things that you definitely need for an enterprise, but UI this is the maximum UI that you can do. You can't just make it super fancy with Power Apps. It is really difficult. I have tried it. But there is something called as Teams functions. I'm not sure on the name of it, where you can write custom components of it. So this is another component. So this is a component of list, and this is a component of item, and this is an icon, and then this is a drop down. So you can make custom components with HTML. So the iframe is another custom component. It doesn't come with your Power Apps right out of the box. So you have to make a custom code, and then you have to build it with, I'm not sure, there is a console way of doing it. I'm not hating console, but you can definitely check out that, how you can use the console way of creating the custom component, and then importing that component into your any of the Power Apps app that you're using or trying to build. Let's say you don't have that particular, in this case, we don't have the iframe built in, so you are creating an iframe. If the loader is available, I would have fixed it, but the loader way is like really hard to figure out. So you have to, so the loader is still there, still here, but you can't just see it. So that is how you can make it. You can't just make it completely disappear from the screen. You can just hide it. That's it. That is the max that you can do. But in the right way, you should remove the loader and then replace that with the actual UI. So yeah, that is all I had. Thank you.